or something else. Yes, ma'am.
Will innocent children of lost parents be raptured?
All right, get Romans, and two passages in Romans. First of all, Romans chapter 5, Romans chapter 4. Now the question is, what about coming about the kids, of unsaved people? And going further than that, sometimes they ask a question about, what about babies unborn?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to them? Romans chapter 4 and Romans chapter 5. Now here's the rule that you apply on this thing, which means that if God wanted to, now it's strictly up to him, but if God wanted to catch up all the babies and children at the rapture of saved or lost, whether they were saved or lost, he could do it. Now, whether he's going to do it, that's something else. All right, Romans chapter 4, verse 15. Now, here's the first principle. Romans 4:15. 4:15. Because the law worketh wrath. For where no law is, there is no transgression. Where there's no law, there's no transgression. Now, the hippies pervert that and say, well, the best thing to do is have no 10 commandments. That way you can't break them. But that's only a partial truth.
Right.
Because the commandments are written in the heart.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of the commandments. Keep your hand there just a minute and come back here to Romans chapter 2 and see about this law stuff. Verse 14. For when the Gentiles which have not the law, there is no law and no transgression, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are law to themselves, which show the work of the law written in the hearts. So it's got to be a conscious knowledge of transgression in the law to be transgression, but the thing is there, and where there's knowledge in the heart of the law, there is transgression. Now the case that comes up here is little babies and boys and girls that don't know that sin is the transgression of the law. That's the definition, 1 John chapter 5. Sin is the transgression of the law. Now this says, where there's no law, there's no transgression. That is, a child up to some point in life, and you're not told the exact point, doesn't know that sin is against God. That is, the child has no knowledge of good and evil. Now the child has a knowledge between right and wrong, but a knowledge of right and wrong is not a knowledge of good and evil. In other words, the knowledge that you should drive on the right side of the highway has nothing to do with the knowledge of good and evil. It has to do with right and wrong. And you folks have children, you know when your baby girl or boy is even 2 years old, he already knows right and wrong by what you've told the kid. And you tell the kid to do something, he doesn't do it, or the child knows. But that child doesn't know when he disobeys his parent that that's a sin against God. He doesn't know that. All right, Romans chapter 5, 13. For until the law, sin was in the world. Well, there can be sin there. Sin can be there, but no transgression. You say why? Because sin is not imputed when there is no law. Why, two things. Where the law isn't present, there is no transgression because sin is not imputed, isn't charged to the child. Come to Romans chapter 6 and see how Paul describes this before he was saved. He describes himself as being saved before he was lost and then getting saved again, which can't be. So you have to interpret in the light of what you just read. Romans chapter 6, and make it 7. Romans chapter 7, verse 7. What shall we say then? If the law of sin, God forbid. Nay, I have not known sin, but by the law. That is, at the time he didn't know sin. At the time he had no knowledge between good and evil. For I have not known lust, except the law had said, now he knows the law, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taken occasion by the commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. Now watch this. For without the law, sin was dead. It was there, but it wasn't imputed. So it was dead. For I was alive without the law once. Before I knew about the law, he was alive. But what happened? When the commandment came, sin revived, and I died. Now you got to be born again. Because you're dead. And the commandment which I was ordained to life, I found to be to death. For sin, taken occasion by the commandment, deceived me and slew me. So what he's saying was, before he knew our knowledge of good and evil and the sin, the transgression of the law, he was safe. Now, not alive in the sense of spiritual life born again, but the sense of innocence. Now, the classic case for this is Genesis 3. In Genesis 3, there's a man and woman out there in that garden, and they're innocent. And they're innocent because they have no knowledge between good and evil. They are not saved. They're innocent. They aren't saved without the shedding of blood. There's no, see? They're not saved until they fall. There's knowledge of the law. And they get clothed with coats of skin, blood. See? But they're innocent. In plain words, they wouldn't have gone to hell. They're innocent. Now, that's the case with children. Deuteronomy chapter 2 says, your little ones, which in that day had no knowledge between good and evil, they shall enter into the land, and I'll give it to them. Now, he didn't say what that age was. In Jonah, at the end of the book, he says, in Nineveh, there are 120,000 people that can't tell the right hand from the left hand. I mean, kids under 3 or 4 years old. And I have met them 4 years old, didn't know the difference between right and left. And I have trained recruits in the Army that didn't know the difference between right and left. Yeah. But that child, up to some age there, that child has no knowledge between good and evil. Now, up to that time, even though the child is born, dead in trespass and sin, the sin is not imputed. And David says, blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. So when you're dealing with, say, folks in Africa, even 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12 years old, that don't know yet what sin is, they're safe. You're dealing with mongoloid babies and feeble-minded morons, they're safe. You don't have to worry about that. And little boys and girls, you know, 1 and 2, you don't have to worry about them. The only time you have to worry is till a person knows that sin is the transgression of the law and good and evil. Now the question comes up in the rapture. Well, in the rapture, if the Lord wanted to take all those kids up, he could, because even though they're born dead in trespass and sin and have never been born again, sin is not imputed, is in charge of them. They're innocent. They're innocent. So the answer is they can all be caught up. If you would ask me for an opinion on it, I would say they will be caught up, because I don't believe God's going to leave a bunch of little ones down here to suffer, going through tribulation, when he could take them out. And he could take them out. So I reckon he will. Oh, yes, ma'am.
What do you think would be the best way to go about teaching a very young child about what good and evil is? I mean, they can grasp the concept of good and bad, but the good and evil, it seems to be the most difficult thing for them. When I'm talking to my son, he gets so confused.
All right, the best thing to do, and of course they have the NEA and the IRS and the rest of the godless, hellish, damnable mess up the country, knows what they're doing, is to get rid of the Ten Commandments. Get Galatians. And get Galatians chapter 4. And I want a verse, by the law works the flesh, no flesh be justified, for by the law the knowledge of sin. Not going to take me more than 5 seconds to find that, because I got a Gideon Bible here I took out of the motel room, and I don't bring my own Bible with me, so this Bible has no notes in it, and a little harder to find the verses sometimes. But I want a verse that says, by the law shall no flesh be justified, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. That Romans or Galatians? I've got one I want in Galatians, but I want that one too. Maybe it's I think it's in Galatians.
2:16.
What is it? 2:16. There it is. Hold on. Well, I want Galatians 2:16 and Galatians 3:24. Now, the best way to give that child a knowledge of good and evil is expose that child to the law, the Ten Commandments. And that's why they've been taken out of the school. They've taken out of the school so the child can't find Christ. The Ten Commandments are a schoolmaster to lead people to Christ. Galatians chapter 2, verse 16. Knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus Christ, we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. For the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. All right, now chapter 3, verse 22. Now the law is a mirror in which you see yourself and see your condition. Paul said, by the law is a knowledge of sin. You get a knowledge of sin from the law. The reason why the child should be exposed to it is the quicker the child is exposed to that coming up, the quicker that child will see his need for Jesus Christ. Now, if we're about God killing the child before the child knows, God's not going to take a little boy or girl when they're in a state of innocence and then give them a knowledge of good and evil and then kill them. It ain't going to work that way. But the reason why the child should get that knowledge of good and evil early is because the earlier he gets that knowledge of good and evil, the earlier he'll see his need for trusting Christ. And the longer he waits to get it, then the worse it's going to get. Now, coming up like I did, of course, I'm no example of this kind of thing. I come up another way, but I know what's wrong with the upcoming. As God is my witness, I don't believe I knew that sin was a transgression of the law till I was 15 years old. That's how late it can run. Looking back to my experience, I knew I was wrong. I mean, the police were chasing me. Obviously, I was doing wrong. And my daddy was whipping me about once every 3 months, and the principal was whipping me about once every other month. And I've been in the principal's office off and on, maybe vice principal. But coming up like that, I knew I was doing wrong and didn't want to get caught, but I never connected with God at all. When I was 15, that thing began to hit me. And then at that time, there's nobody telling me how to get saved. So I went down to the Episcopal Church and got confirmed, which did no good at all. And then one time I was about 19 at Kansas State College. I happened to get a radio broadcast that turned on, and some hillbilly preacher was raving about hell. I can say hell about 3 times, went over and turned the radio off. I mean, it upset me, real bad. I didn't hear what he said. Just heard hell, a couple times and turn it off. Just the devil in me, shutting the thing off. But that delay cost me 27 years. And that time is lost. At my church down there in Pensacola, I preach a sermon, the 10 Commandments, once every 3 years. A series of them. The 10 Commandments. Just put them over again. Someone said, you're not a law, you're under grace. Well, if you're not under law, but you're under grace, don't be preaching the law, then you have no burden for souls, and you're a rascal. You got saved, now to hell with the rest of them. And those commandments are preached to show a person their need for Christ. Not sure where that is. Galatians chapter 3, verse 23, or 22. But the Scripture hath concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given them that believe. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up to the faith which should afterward be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster. You teach the kid. With what? The 10 Commandments. That's why they took it out of the school, to damn all the children. Now, they don't know why they took it out. They didn't know that verse was in there about a schoolmaster. They don't have to know. The devil knows that book from cover to cover. You ain't going to fool him. Wherefore the law is our schoolmaster to bring us to Christ. We might be justified by faith. So the best way to get that child, to expose that child to thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And Paul says that thing by that law is the knowledge of sin.